Hello everybody, Brittany McLean-Campbell here in the CBC Sports digital studio, and today I'm thrilled to be joined by the first Canadian woman to ever win a Paralympic medal in para-triathlon, Leanne Taylor. Leanne, it is so good to have you here today.
Thanks for having me.
So I wanted to start with that Paris 2024 moment because, you know, that was your first Olympic Games. You have a historic medal. Describe the feeling of achieving that at the stage in your career you are. I know your family was there. Talk to me about those emotions.
I think I almost didn't believe it when I crossed the finish line. Like, I really needed to confirm. Like, I was like, I really think that I'm in third. I think I've kept track of this, but I need someone to like put an official, you know, like tell me officially. So I'm like holding up 3 fingers to my husband. He's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, are we in third? Like, can you tell me for sure? Don't mess with me. And then for him, like, he is part of the race. He does the transitions in triathlon. And so for him to be there was huge. And they did a really nice job of letting him be like at the finish line. And so we just had a big hug, and it was so beautiful to be like, we did this freaking thing that we like never really even dared to dream about the medal moment. I think in that moment, I realized like I never like truly let myself believe that this would happen. And so for it to happen, I'm like, this is just surreal.
Yeah, I can't even imagine not only him being your partner in life, but also, you know, he's carrying you through transitions. He is there to support you, I'm sure, with dinners and meals, and you're keeping each other sane, all those things. So talk to me a little bit about your husband's support, if you don't mind.
Yeah, he is my handler, is the name of the role that he plays in triathlon. And for him to be, it's funny, he's so invested in the sport, and a lot of the time he's the driving force behind a lot of the smart decisions that we make. He's very analytical and very sort of into the science of the sport. And so certain things, like we made an adjustment to my bike to make it more aerodynamic, and I was like, not sure how much I believed that it was going to make a difference, and he was really set on it, and I was like, okay, like I'll try it. And then I hop on the bike and I'm literally 1 kilometer an hour faster on our time trial loop. Wow. And I was like, okay, I'll listen to you. Maybe you know.
So relatable.
Yeah, and so like having that kind of support, I think, is so special, to have somebody who's like doing the parts of it that maybe aren't for you. Like, I like riding bikes. I love bikes.
Yeah.
So great to have someone pick up the slack.
Yeah, you're each other's perfect complement, and you've done incredible things in sport together. But I would be remiss not to mention what's happened since that Olympic Games. You welcomed your beautiful baby boy, Ollie, only, 3 months ago?
Yeah.
So first, can we gush about how wonderful he is? Tell me about new mom life. He's adorable. Let's just, between us gals, how's mom life going?
It's kind of wild, really, because I think people tell you, like, oh, you're going to love them more than anything. You won't be able to imagine it. And you, like, believe them, but, like, do you believe them? It's insane how much you feel for this baby. Like, it's just, I'm so obsessed. Yeah. And I think I was nervous that, like, people talk about sort of surviving the newborn phase, which is true and fair. Like, it's not easy, but I don't think it's talked about enough of like how lovely it is too, like how special it is too. So I think we've just been super lucky that we did the games, which is what we wanted to do, and then had Ollie quite close after, which leaves us the option to then maybe go to LA. So right now, so far, we're on track for the things that we wanted. So it's a bit of a pinch me moment when things actually do fall into place.
I was just going to say, all of those, you know, milestones, whether career or life, can be, in a sense, very out of your control. And yet you found a way to, you know, make them work in a timely manner, which is awesome. I do want to ask you about the most challenging part of motherhood so far, because I think as athletes, we immediately can, you know, think about, okay, what's the most challenging part of training or what I've been through? But I want to know, what's the most challenging part about motherhood?
I think it's kind of like a twofold, in that the hardest part is also the best part, and that you love them so much. Yeah. And so it's so, anything else that you like love and care about and prioritize, it's hard to make it fit. Mm-hmm. And so as much as you're always, I guess, like have that little bit of guilt or that bit of like feeling of, is this the best for my baby? And I think that that's kind of the hard part, is like, how do you go from being like so focused on sport as you are in a games year, when you're, you know, putting other things much lower priority than you normally would, to being like, wow, this little person is my whole world now. And then where do I find time for, and like space and mental energy for everything else? Yeah,
no, you put that so well. I think that is, a lot of people can relate to that, because there's endless love, and yet what do you do when you can't communicate yet with this little thing that is maybe uncomfortable, or I can't even imagine. I wanted to ask you about your content and your like sharing of your journey, because I think it's really wonderful how you've pulled back the curtain, in a sense, to what life is like as a mother with a disability, and how you're transitioning through that, like you said, the newborn trenches into the 3-month. I'm sure there's a sleep regression coming up if you haven't already hit it. So tell me about why it's important to share this chapter of your life with everyone.
I was really lucky in that when I was injured, I had so much support from the parasport community, mostly like different people, but often athletes, who would come forward and kind of tell me like what their experiences was like with lots of different things, with like how to get in a car, how to do this transfer, but then ultimately motherhood and like how to pursue that and what it was going to be like and some of the hard parts, and have those people to then call during those hard parts and say like, what are you doing about this? Or like, what carrier do you use? Or how do you navigate this? And I felt like it was so unfair in a way that I had that through sport, but most disabled people don't have like 10 other people with a similar disability that they can call and ask these questions to. And so I wanted to post that content to kind of give those people the opportunity to see some of the things that were helpful to me. And then it sort of became twofold, because in posting, I think the thing that I was always nervous about, to be so honest, is that you get some criticism. Yeah. But then my reaction to that criticism, to people having hesitation about kind of the capability of disabled mothers, is the most hurtful thing that people might say. But I think when you get that comment, it almost makes you want to share more and like push harder to be like, this is normal. This is like how some people live their lives. And if you don't like it, that's fine. But it's not going to discourage me from showing it to other people and showing people that it's an option for them because somebody said, I don't think that that's the right way to do it.
It's so important. And I just want to say thank you, because I have learned so much from your channel, and it doesn't matter if you're living it or you're somebody, maybe you have a close family member or a peer, or you're somebody that's been waiting to see an account like you that never knew if they would be able to have children, and now they watch you do what you do. And I think it's such a wonderful thing. So thank you for because I know it's not easy. You're putting your vulnerability out there, but then you're also taking time to make edits and be creative and come up with fun ideas, but also probably have to be doing this all on lack of sleep and try to be playful and be yourself and all the things.
Yeah.
So thank you. But I hope, are you a little bit enjoying this like creative outlet in a sense?
Yeah, I love it. I think it's really great. I think part of it is like me just wanting to, I'm proud of like when I can do something. Like with the first time when we took Oliver out, Scott was with me, my husband, and he knows obviously he can load the baby in the car seat. And because we were filming it, I was like, no, don't help me. Because I wanted to, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna go through the motions. I'm gonna like film it and then have that to like look at, to help myself and to just like be proud of like that we did it. And I think in a lot of ways, filming it and putting it out there and making it available to other people is like that extra bit of motivation when you're like, you're standing right there, you could just help me.
Yeah.
But then when he goes back to work, he can't and I can't do it. So I think a lot of it came from like needing that extra push for me to learn to do these things, so that now a lot of moms have a hard time getting their baby out for the first time. And I had an additional complication, but because I had forced myself to practice, I could do it. And I think that it was helpful to me too.
Yeah, you're almost putting yourself in a position of discomfort, knowing that it's going to be hard at first. Similar, in a sense, there's a lot of parallels to sport in a way, because you're going through hard training. Maybe that day you don't feel like doing it, but you know it's setting yourself up for the day that you're going to need it. And I think there is a lot of that parallel in your journey of like setting yourself up for the days where you might be by yourself and something happens, or you might, be just trying to do some errands one day and feel some independence. And I think that's so magical. So yeah, good for you. I think it's amazing. I wanted to ask you about your perspective on sport and how it's shifted since you've become a mom.
I think it makes you realize that you can love many things and that one of them doesn't negate the other. And I think there's this culture of like expectation on women and mothers that if you love this, you can't love this. Like if you're a good wife or a good mother, or you're doing this well, you can't also be something else. And I think that was what was really important to me in my journey and going forward, and kind of why I wanted to stay involved in sport, is because I wanted to prove that you can be disabled and you can be a mom, you can be disabled and you can be an athlete, you can be an employee, you can be all of these things at once, and that it's not a matter of like loving something less if you're adding more to your life.
And one thing does not define your value in this world, right? And I think that's what's so magical. I know I can even relate to that. I won an Olympic medal, and it was probably the lowest I've been with my mental health. And I think it took that for me to say, you know what, this one thing that I've gone to achieve in my entire life is not going to make me a different human than I was the day before, right? And so this little beautiful magical gift has given you that ability to look at your career with this whole new lens, I hope. And we spoke quickly about the road to LA and what that might look like for you just a few weeks ago in a casual conversation. And one thing that you brought up, which I really loved, was you said, I'm going to do whatever I can to make my road to LA the road to LA. But I also realize I'm 3 months postpartum and I don't necessarily know all the things that looks like yet. Tell me about your dream to compete at LA as a mom, and kind of where you're at in this chapter and where you hope to be a couple of years from now.
I think the idea of competing in LA represents something like really unique, I guess, to me, in that I grew up with a sense of like that an athlete has to be like sacrifice everything, that you have to put it all on the line if you're going to have the performance that you want. And I think the reason for wanting to go to LA is because I'm genuinely curious and kind of suspect that isn't necessarily the case. Mm-hmm. And I think that we are starting to see a shift in sport more toward this idea that we can be like a whole and happy person first, and then a successful athlete as well. And I don't think it takes anything away from how much you're training or how committed you are to all of that work, but I think it just allows you to prioritize yourself or your family or whatever else is going on as well. And I think a lot of people, and myself included, kind of go into the games with blinders on and miss things that might have actually helped them on the day that they had done. Like miss parts of taking care of themselves or spending time with their friends or family or doing things that actually would have impacted their performance positively when it came down to it. So it's kind of an experiment to see whether that is the case, but I think it is. I think I will be a better athlete for being a mom than if I hadn't.
Honestly, just in my experience in sport, whenever I do talk to athletes in my sport specifically that have continued on into their late 20s, early 30s, that is the biggest difference. They found a way to be a human and also an athlete at the same time. And I think once that balance is found, really beautiful things can come of it. And the sport, you might reach new levels in the sport that you never imagined, and there's almost a freedom to that, which I think is really, really cool. I wanted to ask you about if you were to now put yourself in LA, just visually, physically, however that may be, and see a almost 3-year-old Oliver at the finish line, what does that make you feel?
I think it's so hard to imagine because he's so little. But I think it just is such a culmination of all of the things that it took to be there. And I think those moments are just force you to look back at the ones that really matter. Like, I think that moment will be incredible, but because of everything that went into it, not because it stands alone and is impressive. Mm-hmm. So it's almost hard to imagine it now because I feel like what you feel in that moment isn't really like that race that you just did. That's kind of just the cherry on top, but it's the culmination of like every sacrifice and all the work that you did as a family and all the things that had to go right to be there. So it's hard to say what it'll feel like because I think that thinking back about what will happen between now and then is like really where the magic is.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. You're incredible. I love your words. I love the way you speak, and I love the way you represent something so much greater. And I wanted to ask about that kind of transition from now to LA, because in every sport it's very different, right? Like every sport, there's different trials, different qualifications you have to hit. I know I was following on your socials and you were cheering on Team Canada from home this year at World Championships, but with intent that you want to be back there someday. So what does that path look like logistically, I guess, if that makes sense? Like, what's your goal to get back into a race of the distance and that kind of thing?
Yeah, I'm super glad you asked that because I am really jazzed about what the sports scene was like for me this year. Like, I had decided I wanted a baby no matter what, but I didn't know how that was going to impact the logistics of sport. And it's actually been incredible and better than I thought. So World Triathlon had a system that is new that allows mothers who tell them that they're going on a maternity leave to come back into the sport and maintain their ranking while they're gone for that 1-year period, which is incredible. So it means that I don't have to come back and go to like every kind of lower points race, lower value race all over the world trying to make this happen. I can go back into the level of competition that I was at. So obviously a massive amount of effort to physically be at that level of competition and to belong there, but you actually end up coming back in where you left off, which is amazing for just the realistic timeline of doing this all in 4 years, because that's what you have. And really, you know, by the time you've had the baby and are even thinking about it, you have 3 years until you want to be back on the podium. So it accelerates that timeline so that there's not time spent doing things that don't make sense.
Wow.
And then we also, athletes carding continues while they're pregnant now, which it used to be that athletes would get an injury card, but now they continue to receive the grant money that they get as a national team athlete, which is incredible as well. And so because of those things, you feel like you're already more on track than you would be now you can focus on physically getting prepared, which is what we're doing now.
Yeah.
So in November, I'm doing my first race, not a triathlon though, I'm doing the Philadelphia Marathon. So that actually, we found out I was pregnant with Oliver the night before the Philadelphia Marathon last year.
Oh my
so
goodness.
he raced it as a very tiny little mass of cells. And so now he's gonna come watch it, which will be really special and exciting and just a first chance to like be on the start line and feel competitive again. And I think it'll be awesome to see if I feel that same competition, and I really think I will.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited for that. And then I'll race in the new year. I'll race in March, and in May will be kind of my first 2 big races. And then I'll be looking to be kind of, if I'm in the top 5 in those races, I'll be kind of trending to be on track to get to LA. But ultimately, the 1 year before the games is when we start to collect our points to qualify. But I really want to be looking at the podium, and honestly, I'm not ruling it out to be considering like what it takes to be on the top step of the podium for LA, because I just think that with what we've done so far, I don't think I was necessarily a massive dreamer before Paris. I think there was limits to what I would dare to imagine or say out loud even. Whereas now I'm like, you know what is the point? I am not ashamed to say I want to win and then lose. I would be more ashamed to say I don't want to win, or I'm not brave enough to say I want to win because I don't want to be embarrassed. I think that's silly.
Yeah. It's such important perspective, and I'm not often, I guess speechless, but I think your story has so many layers to it, and I love that idea of I think one of the deterrents in my career was that by the end, I feared failure more than I guess like strived for the pinnacle.
Yeah.
Because I had such this weight to, what if I don't get this medal that I've worked my whole life for? Or what if I don't, and then XYZ. But if you are able to allow yourself, but what if I do? Like really magical things can happen. And I think knowing that you're already thinking this way only 3 months postpartum tells me everything I need to know about how tough you are and how capable you are. And this is going to be such a fun ride for you. I think it'll be fun too, like you mentioned, for your race the next month, to just go through the motions of, having Oliver with you, the family, like the way race day will look a little different, and set yourself up for the next couple of years. So that's so cool.
I think it's exciting. I think you've probably seen it, like marathon finishes where the kids are at the finish and the mom like kind of runs around them because she's like, hold on, I gotta get a time. And I feel like that's how I'm gonna feel, which I think is really beautiful to be like, I can love my children and I can want things for myself. And I really think that we're seeing more of that. And I think that is loving them, because you're not bringing your best to them if you're not your best for them.
100%. And you're showing Oliver by actions, by showing that you can achieve incredible things and you're striving for more. And whether it's an early morning workout, I'm not sure right now he knows about your morning workouts, but one day he'll maybe be a toddler bumping around and I know you've been doing the bike while he's laying there next to you, but one day he will be able to realize that. And I can't wait to hear about how that day goes. I do want to ask, that was such a good kind of like descriptor of what the next couple of years looks like. So thank you for that. I want you to talk to me a little bit about what brings you to Toronto, because you're not from here. So what were you doing today?
I recorded a podcast this morning with Silken Lauman, who has been a mentor and supporter of mine. She heard my story when I was first injured, and I was signed up for a race. It was 8 months after I had a spinal cord injury, and it was this race that I was going to do in Florida. And I was using a racing chair that was from 1992 that had gone to the games with a previous athlete, but was like as old as I am. And so I had signed up for this race and was prepared to do it. And the equipment that I had was just not great. Yeah. And so she had decided that she wanted to support the purchase of a new race equipment for me. And then ultimately that ended up being the equipment that I used to race in Paris. And so she has a podcast that's called Inflection Time, and she talks with different people, not specifically athletes, but about those times in your life where things really change, and like those moments in your life that sort of shift things for you, but also kind of make a bigger picture shift as well. And so she asked me to be on that podcast, and it was honestly really special and really emotional, because it was the first time I had seen her since the games. And I feel like so much of what I've done is because that little nudge that I needed from her. Like when she sponsored the purchase of my bike, I remember being like, she thinks maybe I have something. Yeah. And I don't know if that's really why she did it, but I remember feeling like, needing like a bit of encouragement from when you start in sport and you're nobody yet. It's very hard to keep doing the work and being like, this might lead to nowhere and nothing. And it might just be kind of a bust.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that was like the cue that I needed, that someone believed it wasn't going to be a bust. And so then to sit in front of her and do the podcast today, I was honestly pretty emotional to be like, I did all the things that we thought maybe I would do and more.
It really is such a full circle experience, because in a sense, sport has this way of being like, you know, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? I need the funding to to get to that next level, but I can't really get funded until I'm at that next level. Like I can't prove myself until I've gotten there, but if I don't have the support or the technology or the training or whatever, I can't get there. And so it's like, how do I get there? And it does take people believing in you and taking a chance on you. And yours just so happens to be a 3-time Olympic medalist on and one of the legends in rowing, like Canadian rowing. Yeah. We think about her so fondly. Tell me about whether, you know, back, I guess, when she first supported you, it was 2019, was it?
Yeah.
Or 2019. You know, tell me about what it felt like to have somebody of her caliber believe in you in that moment.
I had read her story. We got an opportunity to meet on a Zoom call the first time we met, and then in person later. But I remember her saying that she had heard about my story and felt like there was ties to her experience of being injured and being in the hospital. And for her, she was, 10 weeks out from the games and saying, I'm still going, even though her doctors were saying, you're probably not.
Yeah.
And I think that for somebody to have gone from the feeling of where I was at, of being first injured and kind of feeling like my life is over and I have no idea what I'm going to do, and then to be so successful from that point, I was like, if she sees something in me now, maybe I believe her. Like, maybe I don't even need to believe in me. Maybe I can just believe this incredible person and trust her that something is right about this. And I feel like it turned out to be true.
It turned out to be very true. And we talk about 2019. You raced your first para-tri in that year, and 5 years later, you're on the Paralympic podium. So, for you, that might have felt like a lifetime. But when we think about sport, that's quite a quick trajectory. How'd you do it?
I listened to everything everybody else said. And I think that's honestly it. I think we had such an influx of incredible people, like Silken to be on my team, and then other athletes, even my competitors. I trained right up until Paris with Kendall Gretsch, who's my competitor in the US. And I remember sitting with her one time in the training center in Colorado Springs at the cafeteria. And she was the first person who was like, I think you can be on the podium. And just so casually, like, oh yeah, it'll be me and you, like we'll be on there together. And I was like, at the time, like, and my husband was there, and I remember later being like, did you hear her say that? Like, Kendall Gretsch just said that. She's such a big deal. Yeah. And it's so funny because, like, those people that supported me, I think just truly listening to them and, like, allowing the support to come and being a student of the sport, I think that is how we accelerated the timeline of something that, maybe anybody with the kind of work that we put in could have achieved, but it was more about doing it so quickly because we listened to the people who'd done it before.
Yeah. So you had an army of people in your corner to get here.
Yeah.
But that makes it that much more rewarding when you have the accomplishment like you did in Paris, and to stand up and know the amount of belief other people had in you. Before we get into the last question, I've always just wanted to ask triathletes this. What's your favorite sport of the three?
Honestly, if anybody tells you a different answer than this, I think maybe they're not being honest, because I think it changes based on what you're good at the time. Okay. Like, if you're hot in one, I think it's your favorite at the time. Fair enough. I feel like generally it's the run, but there's times when it's a different piece depending on what I'm hot in at the time.
That's so fair, honestly. And that's the answer I'm looking for, just the honest and real. Because I'm like, every triathlete must have like this like zip. And I knew a few distance swimmers that became triathletes, and that was kind of like the invincible. A lot of people, if you didn't grow up a swimmer, swimming was the really challenging piece of the triathlon. And so people would always say like, like the distance swimmers would just like go completely way out of the pack, and then everyone catches them in the bike and the swim. But it's really cool to hear a different perspective. I know I've talked to like Tyler Mislachuk and a few of our other Canadian triathletes, and like getting their insight, and especially too coming from a swimmer, how they train in swimming is actually very similar to how I would have trained in swimming. But then you have to do 2 other sports. I was like, this is crazy.
We guys have multiple strokes. Was your favorite ever anything other than what you were good at?
Well, so you bring up a good point. Maybe I'm not right. You bring up a good point. I loved. Like, I would always answer that freestyle, which was my best event. But, like, there's always, like, a fun discipline. Like, I used to love my first, like, love with the sport was butterfly. So I maybe would have answered that butterfly. And now looking back, it could be endless. But I think that's relatable when you say, whatever I'm doing really well in. And I'm sure whatever's hitting in practice, there's something really good about that. So I love it. Leanne, I've loved this chat. Before I let you go, I do want to know, You have so many lessons that I've already taken away in this last, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes we've been chatting, but I want to know, what do you hope that people take away from your story?
I think I would hope that people would start to see disabled people a little bit differently. I think that when people look at me and I say I do triathlon, they make a very polite face.
Yeah.
And that's fine because they don't know and they haven't seen it. And what I would like for the future is just for that to not shock people. I don't blame someone for having that reaction because I didn't know how a wheelchair user would do a triathlon until I started doing it. Yeah. So it's a natural reaction. But it would be so nice if we could start to move toward that, where people are starting to feel and be so comfortable with disabilities that they're like, oh yeah, of course, like there's a way to do that. There's a way to do that. And that's kind of the impact that I'd like to have.
Well, you are definitely leaving your mark on sport and way beyond. Congratulations on everything you've been accomplishing, but also congrats on what's still to come, because I think there's such amazing things ahead for you. And we are so grateful that you took the time for us today. Oliver's so lucky to have a mom like you to look up to. And so, yeah, we appreciate it. And thanks for coming in.
Of course. Thanks for having me.